Hey guys, so in this video, I want to talk about Paper Heron, but before that, I want to explain a little bit about Impromptu, especially if there are new players and you want to understand how Impromptu worked, so I will start with that. So basically, this is how the interaction works. First, you have to consume a lot of Eureka, and from the Eureka, you will be able to get inspiration. And this inspiration in the next round, it will be distributed to your incantation. If there is an ultimate, it will not distribute to the ultimate. So maximum, you can have 5 inspiration per incantation. And when you select this incantation with the inspiration, then you will transfer the inspiration into Impromptu. So based on the number of inspiration that is in Impromptu, then Impromptu will do a certain number of attack, and the percentage of damage that it does is also based on inspiration. And overall, since Impromptu is doing an attack, so it has to have a stats in order for it to do damage. So this stats is based on the average stats and buff that your entire team have. And how much exactly does Impromptu do? So here, if you have 3, 6, 12, or 20 inspiration, this will then provide or give additional attack to Impromptu. Means by default, it does 1 attack. If you have 3 inspiration, it does 1 more. If you have 6 inspiration, then it does 2 more. So if you have 20, then that's 5 more, which means it will do a total of 6 attacks. Okay, and for the damage, by default is 200% mental damage. And for each inspiration is additional 15%. So if like you have 30, let's say you have 10 inspiration, so 3 attacks in totals, and it will do 200 plus 150% mental damage, so you will do in total about 1050% mental damage. If you have 20 inspiration, then it's 6 attack, and each will do 500% mental damage, and then you will do a total of 3000% mental damage. 30 inspiration, 3900%. So which means normally you want to do as much attack as possible to deal more damage. However, Paper Heron changes this setup. Okay, this is the basic setup for Impromptu, but Paper Heron changes that. So to understand what are these changes, now let us look into Paper Heron's kit. So precognition, whenever an ally consumes Eureka, accumulate inspiration. So this is the same as all other inspiration unit. This basically makes her an inspiration character. So Paper Heron increases the likelihood of inspiration point being distributed onto attack type incantation, and the maximum incantation that can be allocated to the incantations is now 8. Previously I mentioned just now is 5. So Paper Heron increased the limit to 8 instead of 5, okay, plus 3 more. And at the start of the round, Paper Heron will restore all Eureka and grant Eureka to allies. So basically, don't worry too much about it. Everyone should have enough Eureka. And here is the major change that Paper Heron did to Impromptu. First of all, it changes it to plant afflatus. By default is no afflatus, okay? The previous Impromptu team having Baccarola changes it to star. So Paper Heron changes it to plant. And now it also deals reality damage instead of mental damage. Previously, it only attacked 1 target at a time, but now it splits its attack and it will target up to 3 targets at once. But here it says the fewer the target, like if there's no 3 targets, you have 2, Impromptu damage will increase slightly. So if there's only 1, then it will increase even more. So her Insight 1, upon entering battle, Paper Heron deployed the Chi Panorama array. After casting ultimate, if not under the Panorama array, she will deploy it. And her max Eureka is increased. Insight 2, upon entering combat, gain attack plus 5%. And Insight 3, upon entering combat, grant other ally through guidance. I will explain about the buff in another slide where I compile all the buffs and damage boosts that she provides to Impromptu, so it's easier for reference. Okay, next, increase the level of Glimpse of the Tau There's 3 level to Glimpse of the Tao, but usually if you do the rotation correctly, you will make sure that the Glimpse of the Tao will always be at level 3. So don't worry too much about that. But if you want to start the game off directly with level 3 array, you need at least 3 inspiration units. Okay? Then it will start from round 1 already at level 3. Next, increase the incantation might of Impromptu Incantation while Chi Panorama is active equal to the current level of Glimpse of Tao times 5%. So if it's at level 3, it's 15%. So what does the array do? First of all, each Impromptu Incantation will deal additional 50% relative damage, and he has 50% damage dealt. When there are 2 or 1 target, it also deals 25 to 50% relative damage. In addition, it can only hit up to 3 times per round. Assess attacks are, however, converted to extra relative damage for the first 3 Impromptu's attack. And that can stack up to 4 times to a total of 800%. So Glimpse of Tao, you don't need to look at level 1 or level 2 because if you do the rotation right, it will always be at level 3. So deal additional 100% relative damage and have 15% penetration rate. If there are 2 or 1 enemy Impromptu Incantation deal, it adds additional 25% if it's 2 enemies and 50% if it's 1 enemy relative damage. Level 3 lasts for 4 rounds, okay? After which it returns back to Glimpse of Tao, level 2. So in 4 rounds, you use Paper Heron's ultimate, it will just bring Glimpse of the Tao back to level 3. Since I mentioned the ultimate, so here the ultimate is a mass attack, grant 2 Eureka to caster, deal 750% relative damage to all enemies for each Eureka possessed by the character. For this attack, ultimate might is increased by 15%, but usually you don't really bother about the damage from her ultimate anyway. It's always impromptu, that is what we need to concentrate on. So after attacking, add 8 inspiration to this round Impromptu Incantation and increase the level of Glimpse of Tao by 1. So 3 drop back to 2, you use this, it go back to 3. Okay? So since level 3 Glimpse of Tao lasts for 4 rounds, we need to recast this ultimate every 4 rounds. For skill 1, it basically consume 2 Eureka and increase the number of Impromptu Incantation attack by 1 round. Okay? Then for skill 2, grant self 2 stack of Valley Wind and all ally auspicious wind for 2 rounds. Valley Wind is a stack buff, so she will consume 1 stack at the start of the round, every round if the buff is there. Then she will consume 2 Eureka to increase the damage dealt of Impromptu Incantation by 20% or 25 or 30% depending on the rank of this incantation. So overall here, the buff, she grants to all ally through guidance. So do note that this 15% is for the other allies, not her. So it's not exactly a 15% increase for Impromptu because now you average it out across 4. So 15% divided by 4 times 3, that is the attack that is increased. Anyway, when the carrier actively casts an incantation, Paper Heron consume 2 Eureka. So usually that character themselves will consume 2 Eureka. And now Paper Heron consume another 2. So you can consume up to 4 Eureka. And this will add 2 points of inspiration to this round Impromptu's incantation. And this buff cannot be dispelled. Valley Wind, which is from her skill 2, at the start of the round, Paper Heron will consume 1 stack of Valley Wind and 2 Eureka to increase the damage of Impromptu Incantation this round by 20%. And Auspicious Wind for all allies, including herself, 20% damage dealt and 20% incantation might. And for the array, Chi Panorama provides 15% damage dealt, 15% incantation might, and 15% penetration rate. Apart from the buffs, Paper Heron also directly increases the relative damage that Impromptu does. So Chi Panorama at level 3, so that's the Glimpse of the Tao at level 3, it grants plus 150% relative damage. If there is 2 or one enemy. So if it's 3 enemy, then you don't get this bonus. If it's 2 enemy on the field, then additional 50% relative damage. And if there's just 1 enemy, then additional 100% relative damage. Excess instances of attack, this one I already mentioned, so plus 200% per excess instance, okay, up to 4 times. So total, if there are 3 enemies, you are getting up to 950% per attack. Okay, so total will be 2,850%. If there's 2 enemies, then it's 1,000, and total is 3,000. And if there's 1 enemy, then it's 1,050. Total is 3,150. And this again is assuming that Impromptu has 7 instances of attack, but only 3 that is actually triggered. The rest becomes plus 800% relative damage. So here, if we include the inspiration, so this is a calculation for the relative damage. Okay, so here if I assume, let's say you have accumulated up to 30 inspiration, so default is 200, and every 1 inspiration is 15, so 30 is 450, so overall you get 650% relative damage. So now you include that from the one that I mentioned just now, then you get a total of 1,600% per attack if there is 3 enemies. So total is 4,800% relative damage. If it's 2, then you get 50% more. Total is 4,950, and then 1 enemy you are doing like 5,100%. But 30 inspiration is actually not that high, because this version of Impromptu, this plan Impromptu, they can really go up to a really high number, up to even 70 inspiration. And here I calculated if it's 3 enemy and you have like 70 inspiration, you are doing like 6,600% relative damage. And if there's 1 enemy, then you are doing all the way to 6,900% relative damage. This is why this plan Impromptu deals so much damage. Alright, so here regarding the max inspiration on the incantation and Eureka consumption. So we also want to know how many Eureka can be consumed and inspiration that we generate. So for max inspiration, by default is 5, Paper Heron plus 3. If you have Keeperina in the party, then it's plus 1. So total you get up to 9 inspiration per cut. Okay, per incantations. Okay. For Eureka consumption, Paper Heron, she by default consume 2 at the start of the round due to Valley Wind, where she will consume 1 stack of Valley Wind. And every incantation that she uses, then she consumes another 2 more Eureka. For Tooth Fairy and Lee, their incantation will actually consume 4 Eureka, but 2 is from Tooth Fairy and 2 more is from Paper Heron. Right? So Lee is the same as well, but Lee is a bit different because she uses the Eurekas in order to rank up her card. So 1 Eureka, 1 rank, 2 Eureka, 2 ranks. Keeperina at the start of the round will minus 4 Eureka and cast 2 shields, so she passively consumes 4 Eureka per round. But if you remember the video that I did for Tooth Fairy, you want to be able to consume 20 Eureka so that you can inflict, so you can get 5 baby tooth and inflict 5 bad tooth on the enemy. So let us calculate a little bit. Keeperina, 4 Eureka, so there are 16 more. Then 2 from Paper Heron, so 14 more. Okay, for Tooth Fairy to gain 5 baby tooth. So using 3 incantation from Tooth Fairy or Lee will consume 12 Eureka. So in the end, you just need to use 1 more from Paper Heron to complete or to gain 14 Eureka. And by doing so, you actually have 1 more AP left. But here I assume that 1 AP maybe is used for ultimate. So basically, it is quite possible to achieve up to consumption of 20 Eureka and get 5 baby tooth for Tooth Fairy. As for the generation of inspiration, if we consume 20 Eureka, that would be 20 inspiration. And here I just want to highlight that in regards to the distribution of inspiration, the Eureka that's consumed at the start of the round, for example, Keeperina and Paper Heron's Valley Wind, actually trigger first before it is distributed. Okay, so do take note of that. And Lee as well, based on the ghosts that she accumulated, she will grant a number of inspiration to be distributed as well. And this happened at the start of the round before the distribution. So if you have like 12 ghosts, then you get 12 inspiration. So including the one that you get before, like 20. So this will give you 32 inspiration. Right? So there's a typo there. So the team will gain 32 inspiration to be distributed this round. So the picture on the right that I show, I did not get 32, but yeah, getting 30, 28, 30 inspiration to be distributed is very easy for this plant impromptu team. And here I just want to show you now with the full team, 2 Fairy, Lee, and Paper Heron, they provide a tremendous amount of buff, debuff to the entire team and enemy, and this is why they hit so hard. Okay, they do so much damage. And this is a breakdown for these 3 units, Paper Heron, 2 Fairy, and Lee. But I may be mistaken here and there because there is just this buff and everything come from all over the place, a little bit from their insight, some is from their skills, some is from their array, ultimate, a bunch. Okay, so I might have missed out something, but basically it is really a lot of buffs. And you don't have to worry too much about it. This team is very easy to play. You will get everything up and active most of the time anyway. So these are the 4 characters. Paper Heron, 2 Fairy, and Lee, Keeperina. This currently forms the Plant Impromptu team. So Paper Heron, her major role is she's basically like the DPS for this team, and she just provides so much damage boost to Plant Impromptu. Then she also increases Eureka consumption so we can generate even more inspiration. 2 Fairy is mainly there to increase inspiration on Impromptu because every tooth, baby tooth that she consume at the start of the round will give 2 inspiration to Impromptu, not for distribution, but to Impromptu directly. So it's a very big boost. Then she also provides AP +1 because the more incantation you use, then you can add more attack to Impromptu, you can increase Impromptu damage dealt, you can generate more inspiration and things like that. So that AP +1 is pretty critical for the team. Then you have Lee, increased inspiration to be distributed because of Wandering Ghost. And when she uses ultimate, she also grants a high number of inspiration for Impromptu. And because in the very later stages, the end game, 2 Fairy healing is insufficient, which is why we add Keeperina in as the sustain. And she also passively consumes Eureka to provide Baby Tooth to 2 Fairy, as well as to generate more inspiration. Apart from that 4 units, if you don't have all of them, you want to replace, yes, these are some of the characters that I think you can use. So first is Baccarola. Baccarola is very interesting because she can change Impromptu back to star and mental damage, while you can keep the AoE attack which is from Paper Heron. So you can put Paper Heron and Baccarola together. Whoever is placed after the other character, then that is the character that determines the afflatus and damage type. So if you put Paper Heron behind Baccarola, it will be plant and reality. If you put Baccarola behind Paper Heron, then it will be star and mineral. Regulus is also pretty good. Very passive play, and she will be able to bring forward 1 card's inspiration to the next round. So if you have like 9 accumulated on 1 incantation and you don't want to use it, then Regulus can bring it forward. So you can use Regulus with them as well. Aleph
also have AP +1 and provide incantation might, but his problem is that he have another debuff that reduces mental defense, but since Impromptu now is reality, that is not, it doesn't benefit Impromptu. As for his ultimate that copies incantation, it is still pretty useful as you can copy incantation with very high inspiration to be used again in the next round. And that will overall result, to an even higher damage. And for the rotation, first of all, make sure Impromptu can do 7 attacks. So with 20 inspiration, which you can easily get, Tooth Fairy already provide 10. So from Baby Tooth. So you just need 10 more. Okay? With that, by default, you have 6 attacks, so you just need 1 more. So Paper Heron, if you use S2 at least once in 2 rounds, then you will get the damage dealt boost from the Valley Wind and Auspicious Wind. But if you actively cast it, then you get additional 20% damage dealt. So I would say minimum, use it every 2 rounds, but if possible, just use it every round. It's not too bad. No need to use S1 if Tooth Fairy use her S1, because Tooth Fairy also increases the incantation number of instant attack by 1. So you can already easily hit 7 attacks. Okay, and since her ultimate goes from Glimpse of the Tao from level 3 to 2 in 4 rounds, so you just have to recast her ultimate every 4 rounds to maintain the level of the array. For NN Lee, you want to use S2 every 3 rounds because it lasts for 3 rounds, but if you need the additional Moxie, then just use it. Okay, in the rotation that I'll be recommending, I will be suggesting you to use NN Lee's buff skill every 2 rounds. Then for her skill 1, use it every round unless you have ultimate. If you have ultimate, you don't need to use S1 because using S1 will give 50% incantation might, which is huge. Tooth Fairy, definitely you want to use S1 every round because you want that +1 AP unless you have Portrait for Tooth Fairy P1. Then you don't need to because the continuous action lasts for 2 rounds. Then in that case, you would want to use more S2 because S2 can actively increases Impromptu's damage by 20%, just like Paper Heron's buff. So this is the rotation. It's a 4-round rotation, and I would suggest to align Tooth Fairy and Annalise out because Annalise out will really give a tremendous boost to inspiration in Impromptu, and with that, Impromptu will hit really, really hard. And if all that damage can be translated into 30% Genesis, that would be the best. So I suggest to align Tooth Fairy out and Annalise out to be used in the same round. Then after that, Paper Heron, you don't have to, because technically if you use a skill that have 9 inspiration, it is better than using Paper Heron's ultimate that just grant 8 inspiration. Okay, yeah, so you can look at this. There are some free AP that I have listed, but for those free AP, you can actually use it to merge certain cards, especially like Tooth Fairy or Annalise or even Paper Heron herself. But Paper Heron, to me, the rotation is a bit more flexible because it's 4 rounds, whereby for Annalise and Tooth Fairy, if you can speed up their rotation, like every 3 rounds they can cast their out, then you will do even more damage. But here, I would suggest if you want to do so, then you really have to consider merging so that they can regain their ultimate faster. For her Psychube, the best in slot is her own Psychube, where for every Eureka an ally consume, all allies gain 0.4% damage dealt. I'm looking at level 5 by the way, and stack out to 30 times, so that is 8%. If the user is of a plant afflatus when setting an array, it also increases all allies' incantation might by 12%. So 12% damage dealt, 12% incantation might. This effect is removed when the array ends or get replaced. As for her portrait, the best is P2 and P5 if you want to chase a portrait. That's because P2 increases the number of attack to 4, and that is a lot. And this also changes the rotation a little bit because The last I recommend is like NLE out, 2 fairy out as well. Then you use Paper Heron S2 to boost damage. Then you also use 2 fairies heal incantation to boost damage. And then 2 fairies skill 1 for AP plus 1. And additional 1 more instant of attack for Impromptu. However, now since you can go up to 4, you want to have 8 instant of attack instead of 7. But that is okay if 2 fairies using audio coda because that adds 1 more instances of attack. However, if you go all the way to P5, now you can attack 5 times, then perhaps you want to use 1 more of Paper Heron's S1 because that also plus 1 to the attack instances. Okay, so P0, P2, or P5. Lastly, should you pull? Well, she is the strongest plant unit, or basically the team, her team is the strongest plant team that we have. And the next plant is Poison Archetype, which is not technically plant afflatus because they does Genesis damage anyway, so it doesn't matter if the enemy is weak against plant or not. And this whole plant Impromptu is quite easy to use. It's quite difficult for you to screw it up, so you should consider that if you are like a beginner and wouldn't want to think too much into all the exact execution of the rotation. If your roster lack depth, so if you don't have a lot of characters, you're still missing a unit here and there, I would really recommend you to get Paper Heron. But do get at least 2 fairy as well, okay? Then yes, you should be able to clear a lot of endgame coming forward in the next 2 patch. But if you already have a very wide roster, you think that you have cleared everything, do I need another plant team? Well, it is not necessary. So that really depends on you, but I'd say don't miss out. Paper Heron is not quite, but it's really strong, okay, and meta defining. Okay, so that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.